Something different for Spotlight this morning is where we are not interviewing an urban woman, but it's an absolute honor for us to welcome our special guest, Hughes, who is the director of Palestine Aid, a registered charity in the north of Ireland. Now, the charity has supplied over 210,000 meals, subhanAllah, to 15,000 displaced family in Razia from March 2024 to date. And he's been in many, many countries. He's also the author of 2 books. So let's chat with him and find out more about it. But he also he writes for Al Mayadeen in Lebanon, and he also appears on the Iranian Press TV and English broadcast media. He's the presenter of the Independent Activist podcast on YouTube and an anti-imperialist activist. It's an absolute honor for us to welcome Hughes on Urban Woman this morning. Good morning and welcome.
Good morning, Razia. Good morning, everyone. It's an absolute pleasure for me too to be in the show. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you so much for your time. And listeners, you can join us. We are live on Facebook as well. If you have any questions, feel free to drop it to Hughes as well. Now, let's jump straight into it. What actually inspired you to establish Palestine Aid, and how has the charity managed to provide over 210,000 meals to displaced families in Gaza?
Well, I think many people around the globe see the support from the people of Ireland, not necessarily our government, but more and more they appear to be reflecting public opinion upon the genocidal actions of the Israeli state in Gaza. But when I grew up in Belfast, we had our own internal problems. We had our own national war of liberation against the continued occupation of our country. So when I was 6 in 1969, when the current round of rebellion and revolution against foreign occupation occurred in Ireland. So I grew up through the Troubles. And in and around the late 1970s, early 1980s, I remember seeing, we have murals on the walls where someone puts up a painting to reflect the political or social issue of our time that was contemporary. And what I saw in Beachmount Avenue in West Belfast was a mural that showed 2 men on a gable wall. One of them was dressed as a member of the Irish Republican Army, and the other was dressed with the keffiyeh as a member of the PLO. And above it, they were both holding on to an RPG, a rocket-propelled grenade. And above it, it said, 1 aim, 2 struggles. So even in the late 1970s, there was an affinity between the Irish people in the north of Ireland who were still under British occupation with the British-inspired occupation of Palestine from the Balfour Agreement in 1817 all the way through. So in and around 2009, Razia, I had a business, I had a guest house, and I started using the internet for bookings and then started surfing the net. I was on social media. And in and around that time, there was Operation Cast Lead. That was 2008 to 2009, where the Israelis murdered around 345 children and around 1,200 people. Now, this was in, as I say, over Christmas, the new year, 2008, 2009. And coming on from that, from the siege that was imposed in 2005, 2006 on Gaza. So without a long story, I mean, the Americans and the Israelis and the British told the people in Palestine, in the occupied West Bank and in Gaza, oh, we don't have one voice to negotiate with. We need one voice representing the Palestinian people for an overall peace process that they never intended to follow through on. So there were democratic elections in the occupied territories in the West Bank and in Gaza. And what happened was the people elected Hamas. So America and these Western so-called democracies had called for a democratic plebiscite. When the people voted for Hamas, they said, we accept this as a legitimate election. We accept that you have elected Hamas as your leaders, but we're refusing to deal with them. So the democracies in the West, we called for a democratic system and representation in Palestine, then refused the democratic vote and will of the people. And they began the siege in 2006, which continues to today. So in 2010, the Mavi Marmara, this was a ship from the Turkish charity IHH, and they sent a flotilla which had like wheelchairs and medicine and building equipment had all been checked by the Turks and everything was legitimate. And that boat was hijacked by the Israeli Navy on the open international seas on its way to Gaza. And on
Mm,
boarding an unarmed ship full of humanitarians from all over the world, they then murdered 9 of the people on the boat. There were 9
mm,
shaheeds, people who just wanted to go to Gaza as humanitarians and help the people in distress. One of them was called Furkan Dogan. He had
mhm,
dual nationality. He was American and he was also Turkish. And he
mhm,
was a doctor. And his dream was to go to Africa and give people back their sight from people who suffer from glaucoma and diseases from like the flies that affect young children.
mhm,
So he wanted to save eyesight from people in Africa, and he was murdered by the Zionists on the boat. So following on from that, in September 2010,
mhm,
George Galloway, the British MP, he uh, he organised the Viva Palestina convoys, and I was on Viva Palestina 5. So we fundraised in Belfast. We got a 13-seater wheelchair accessible minibus. We went from Belfast to Dublin to London. George Galloway gave us a rousing send off at Tower Bridge near the Houses of Parliament. So we went from London to Paris, and then from Paris we went to Lyon, also in France. Then we went over the Alps into Italy, and we went
mhm,
to Turin, then Milan, then Ancona, where we got a
mhm,
boat to Thessalonica in Greece. From Greece through to Turkey, through Istanbul, and I think it was Ankara. And then we went into Syria in 2010. And
mhm,
we then went through Damascus, and we had to wait for 15 days in Latakia, which is a southern port on the Syrian uh, coastline, which is opposite Al Arish in Egypt. We had to wait 15 days for there were 3 security apparatus
mhm.
setups in Egypt. We had to wait for all of them to agree to all of the. So we were all vetted. So they had to agree to all the people going, and they actually barred some people, including George Galloway. He was persona non grata. He wasn't able
Yeah.
to go, and we were then went to Al Arish and then Rafah, and I got in on the 21st, whole convoy, got in on the 21st of October 2010. And I remember that so clearly because that's my birthday. So we waited,
Right.
it was a total of like 33, 34 days of a journey to get into
Wow.
Gaza, where we stayed for 3 days. And we donated the 13-seater wheelchair accessible minibus to the Al Auda Hospital in Gaza City. So I think there were like 350 people from West Asia, from America, from Canada, Australia, Ireland, Britain. People joined us in France, people joined us in Italy, people joined us in Syria. So we were there for 3 days, and I stayed in the Palestine Hotel, which was right on the coast overlooking the seaport in Gaza. And
Mhm,
at that time, the hotel was being run with generators because Israel decides how much fuel gets in. Even then, they were counting how many calories a person could
mhm,
survive on. They were trying to limit the amount of food and the calorific value of the food so that
mm.
people were not starving, but they would be kind of psychologically and emotionally affected by the fact that they couldn't have the proper nutrition, especially for the children, that was needed. And I was in
Correct.
the hotel one evening and I was on the balcony, Razia, and I looked up the coast and I saw this beautiful oasis of light. It was like in Britain they have Blackpool. It's a seaside town and it's all lit up. It looks like Christmas all year round. Uh, and I thought, wow, that's beautiful. And after
Mhm.
about 5 seconds, I realized that's Israel. That's occupied
Wow.
Palestine. I'm looking at up the coast because Gaza is only like 25 miles long and 6 miles across. It's the biggest
Mhm.
concentration camp in the world for humanity. And I looked
Correct.
up and it struck me. Imagine if my family had been put out in the Nakba in
Mm.
1948, or we
Mhm,
became refugees in 1967, and you're
mhm,
looking up the coast 10 miles or whatever it happened to be. It wouldn't even be that far. And you're thinking,
mm.
my God, that's our home, that's our
Exactly.
land, that's where we should
Mhm.
be living. So we come back from the convoy, and some of the Irish guys, there were 8 of us, including Paddy McShane, a councillor from the North Atlantic coast, and John Herson, who's very much still involved in the cause of Palestine in the north of Ireland today. Uh, Me and Paddy and Dr. Saib Shaf, he was the Palestinian representative to Ireland 2001, 2003. He's the patron of Palestine Aid. So we saw on the ground the need. I mean, we saw the schools that were full of bullet holes. We saw children even then, not having proper footwear.
Mm.
We saw some children in their bare feet. That's 15 years ago. So we come back and we started Palestine Aid, a registered charity in the north of
Mhm.
Ireland. The first thing we did was we contacted the guys who'd been our interpreters during the 3 days that we'd been in Gaza, and they worked in
Mhm.
an orphanage. And we said, how can we help? So we raised £10,000 for a solar panel project, and that was in 2011, so that the orphanage could have its own independent electrical supply, so they weren't reliant on having to use the generators whenever the main power station run out of fuel because the Israelis decided, they would use food and medicine and fuel as a leverage upon the democratically elected government in Gaza. So
Mhm.
2011, we got the solar panels, and in 12, 13, and 14, we paid for scholarships in the Islamic University in Gaza. So
Mhm.
we asked the university to pick a student who was exceptional but didn't have the finances to actually continue with their education. So we paid for their 3 year course in their not their masters, but to become a graduate in law, and one in
Mhm.
midwifery and one in child psychology. Uh, the orphanage was bombed in May 2021. A solar panel project was destroyed, and the Islamic University in Gaza was destroyed as part of this genocidal attack on Gaza as we speak. So, just briefly, then, prior to October 8th,
Mhm.
2023, we were able to have, we would pay for like kids to go for Day at the Beach, sports day,
Right. Mhm.
meat parcels for people to break their fast at Eid, and
Mhm.
we got coats, winter coats, and winter shoes for the children, uh, and toys for orphanages and special schools for kids with special needs. And then from October 23, we had difficulty then transferring our money. We have never sent anything to Gaza. We're all volunteers in Belfast, and all the
Okay.
guys that's our team in Gaza are volunteers. So we have like a
Okay.
100% donation policy. And
Mhm.
we always say to the guys on the ground, you find the need, we'll send the money, you spend the
Mhm.
money, but send us videos or send us
Mhm.
some verification for our donors as to how the money's spent for transparency purposes. So we have a Facebook page, which is Palestine Aid Ireland, and we put up
Right.
videos and we put up testimonials. So we then we had trouble getting the money in, but from March we actually had to go to the bank in Ramallah, not physically, but we had to show them our charitable certification, our company's house registration, everyone who's involved in the charity, just to prove that
Mhm.
it was all above ground, because there were other censures being placed on the Bank of Palestine as to how money get in. So we've never collected clothes, we've never collected toys, we've never collected anything to send physically to Gaza, because it
Mhm.
costs more. We were able to buy a winter coat, a beautiful coat with a hood and the fake fur around the top for a child in Gaza for $5 before
Mhm.
October 23. That, I mean, for us to buy it here, it's probably $20, or even if people donated them free, and then you've got to somehow get them over to Egypt, and then you have to trust that it's not going to get stolen. Uh, People
Mhm.
here have raised things before, put them in containers, put them on ships, sent them over to Egypt, and then they've been broken into in the secured customs area in the port in Al Arish, and things have been stolen. So we've always sent money. So from March
Mhm.
2024, we've sent £90,000 which is about $108,000 to our guys on the ground who have been displaced over 7 or 8 times because they
Mm-hmm.
had to go from Khan Yunis to Rafah to somewhere outside Rafah, back to
Mm.
Rafah, back up to Khan Yunis, all
Yeah.
homeless, like 80% of all the people in Gaza. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but part of the reason we do what we do is if you speak to a Palestinian, especially under the present circumstances, they'll say, "Where is the world? Why does no one care? Uh,
Yes.
why have we been abandoned?"
Mm-hmm.
But when they get a food parcel in a tent in a refugee camp in Gaza,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
they ask where that help and aid has come from, and
Mm.
someone says, "Excuse me," someone says, like that's from people in Belfast.
Wow.
They know they're not alone, and they know the people care. So, you know, sorry.
Absolutely. Oh, no, it is emotional indeed because definitely you have to have a heart. And I said that is what this genocide has only proven that there are so many people. It's just literally segregating those with a heart and those who don't have a heart. It's just pure and evil. It's as simple as that. And it's so beautiful to see that. And yes, we've seen many pictures where the Palestinians at that time, you don't even blame them, where they feel they've been forsaken and they feel like the world has forgotten about them. But and probably they didn't realize that how many people are with them, but yet they were being forcefully denied giving that assistance. So all the trucks were piling out, people are sending their money, people are sending their wishes, their prayers, everything. And yes, it's that sense of helplessness. But I think just listening to you and knowing that, yes, this is an affirmation that globally people are with Palestine because this is absolute injustice on every level. Listening to how strategically they will torture and deprive even the basic necessities. It's very strategic in order to kill the whole Palestinian people and obviously the citizens. So I think we're having a little bit of a lag on Facebook, but I'm not sure if you can hear me for our use. Can you hear
Yes,
me?
absolutely. Yes, 100%.
And I have to say, you mentioned a name that I revere, I look up to as well. I've been watching him with my late dad from the time I was young, George Galloway, and I just salute him and take my hat off to how he says things as it is and how he stands up as well for where he sees the injustice, especially in Palestine as well. Now, you're speaking from your heart. We appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. Due to time, you're also on TV and things like that. You've traveled so many places as you have mentioned. As we wrap up, because of time, what would you like to share with our Urban Woman listeners this morning? Your take home message.
Well, my message to a female audience is your mothers, your aunties, your daughters, and your sisters. So remember the people in Palestine who have lost their husbands and their sons, their mothers, their daughters, their sisters, their aunties. So I would encourage people not only to attend demonstrations and wave their flags, which is a public display of support for Palestine, but people in South Africa and people in the rest of the globe know how important BDS is. So don't buy any Israeli products. Don't go to McDonald's. Don't go to Starbucks. Boycott all these major. I would boycott potentially all American firms and all American products because they're fully
Mhm.
complicit in the murders in Gaza. And I would ask people not to forget what's happening because although we are seeing the resurgence of government and civil structure in Gaza, hopefully and finally, when this barbarity ends, don't think because there's a ceasefire, you don't have to do anything. Don't think
Correct.
it's over. The people in Gaza will need everyone more after the ceasefires are fully in place, if that's what it comes to be, inshallah, and support people even more because they will need our help even more going forward.
Absolutely, well said. It's all about now helping him to rebuild. And even though there's the ceasefire that has been announced, we still see the barbaric actions of the Israelis shooting, killing, people just walking innocently. And you just think, Allahu Akbar, the images in itself is so daunting. But yet, as you were expressing that you were looking at this beautiful stretch of land and you thought, wow, then you realize it was Israel. I'm just thinking, now imagine being robbed of your own land, by the very same people that you opened up your heart to say everybody else is rejecting you, here's our land, and now to be faced with such torture, torment, genocide, things like that, ethnic cleansing, so to say, you can see they have intentions of really wiping out Palestine, but Allah Azza wa Jalla is so great. And I'm just thinking that, any human being will probably be filled with anger, filled with rage, but all we see is that resilience coming through. We just see the smiles on their face. We see the hope. We see that like absolute determination to rebuild, affirming that we will rebuild no matter what they've been through. And I think that is such a powerful human ability, because the world is seeing what they're going through. For our Hughes, it's been an absolute wonderful opportunity to chat with you. Thank you so much for sharing so much with us, especially from your side of the world. And may Allah Azza wa Jal continue to give you and your team the strength to just continue doing the good work. And we know that whatever good you do always comes back. Until we connect again, thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you very much. Free Palestine.
Free Palestine. Thank you so much. And that was Farah Hughes, Director of Palestine Aid. He's in Ireland. So do go and